China stands at the center of a global economic transformation unlike any in modern history. Its rise is fueled by massive investment in clean energy, technologies, and industrial innovation. This journey did not happen overnight. They began more than 4 decades ago. Today, China is recognized as a global industrial superpower. The story starts in the wake of catastrophe. Chairman Mao Zedong died in 1976, leaving China economically fragile. Mao's policies had attempted rapid industrialization through central planning and collectivization. One of his most infamous campaigns, the Great Leap Forward of 1958, ended in disaster. Millions of lives were lost, and famine estimates range from 15 to 55 million. The economy remained largely agrarian and underdeveloped. The Cultural Revolution further disrupted social and economic stability. China faced the daunting task of rebuilding from chaos. Deng Xiaoping rose to power in 1978. He saw the urgent need for economic reform. Deng's approach was pragmatic, famously saying, "It doesn't matter if a cat is black or white, as long as it catches mice." This marked a break from rigid ideological control. Under Deng, the reform and opening up policy reshaped China. Markets began setting prices, foreign investment was welcomed, and private businesses flourished. Reforms were gradual but transformative. By the 1990s, economic growth accelerated. GDP per capita grew 5-fold between 1980 and 2000. Exports surged, connecting China to global markets. Special economic zones were established. Inspired by Singapore's Lee Kuan Yew, Shenzhen became the most famous of these zones. Once a small fishing village, Shenzhen exploded into a manufacturing hub. Factories produced everything from pens to batteries. Workers flooded in from rural areas seeking opportunity. This was China's first step toward becoming the world's factory. The rise of BYD illustrates China's economic ascent. Wang Chuanfu was born into a poor rural family. He studied chemistry and joined a battery company in Shenzhen. 2 years later, he founded Yadi Electronics. Yadi focused on affordable, rechargeable batteries. The company later became BYD, a global industrial powerhouse. Low wages in 1990s China allowed companies like Yadi to outcompete international rivals on price. By 2000, Yadi Electronics was the world's largest mobile phone battery manufacturer. Wang took BYD public in 2002, raising over $200 million. He became a symbol of China's entrepreneurial success. Meanwhile, China's GDP per capita in 1995 was just over $600 by comparison. South Korea's was $12,000 and Japan's $44,000. WTO accession in 2001 marked another turning point. China gained unprecedented access to global markets. In return, it committed to economic liberalization. The following decade saw GDP per capita surge 5-fold. Exports accounted for 60% of GDP by 2007. Cheap Chinese goods flooded international markets, creating massive trade surpluses. By 2010, China surpassed Japan as the world's second-largest economy. Yet, export manufacturing remained largely labor-intensive and low-tech. BYD was expanding into the auto industry, but remained 26th in global vehicle production. China led in solar and wind technologies, but domestic adoption lagged. Coal still supplied 80% of electricity in 2010. Transformation was remarkable, yet China remained dependent on foreign high-tech imports. When Xi Jinping became president in 2012, he aimed higher. In 2015, Made in China 2025 was unveiled. The plan acknowledged weaknesses in manufacturing: size without strength, low innovation, and reliance on foreign tech. Key sectors identified included robotics, aerospace, biotech, EVs, and renewable energy. The strategy was a blueprint to elevate China to superpower status. Today, China dominates the global clean energy supply chain. In the first 5 months of 2024 alone, 244 gigawatts of solar and wind capacity was installed. That's enough to power entire nations like Indonesia or Turkey. Companies like BYD, LONGi Solar, and Goldwind lead in both cost and innovation. BYD ranks as the third largest auto brand in the world. China now purchases more electric cars than conventional gasoline vehicles domestically. Solar, wind, and battery production figures are staggering. China produces 80% of global solar panels. It produces 60% of wind turbines and up to 90% of lithium batteries. BYD has expanded globally, with factories in Brazil, Hungary, Thailand, and Turkey. Trade surpluses approach $1 trillion, underscoring industrial might. State support has been pivotal to this success. In 2019 alone, industrial support spending reached $400 billion. Support takes many forms: direct subsidies, preferential pricing, tax incentives, and cheap land. BYD received $3.7 billion in subsidies from 2018 to 2022. Wind turbine makers like Goldwind and Mingyang also benefited. Feed-in tariffs guaranteed renewable energy plants higher electricity rates than coal. Tax breaks helped fund operations and research. Cheap loans from state-owned banks prioritized government goals over risk. Bulk procurement accelerated growth. In 2011, BYD received the world's largest electric bus lease tender from Shenzhen. Government equity funding acted like venture capital. NIO received a $1 billion stake from the Hefei city government in 2020. Combined, these measures covered roughly 23% of an EV's cost in 2018. State-backed support makes it nearly impossible for Western rivals to compete. Global controversy has followed. Cheap Chinese exports have triggered calls for tariffs. Solar panel exports have grown sevenfold since 2017, while prices fell over 60%. Critics argue this threatens domestic industries. China counters that global subsidies exist elsewhere. Like Tesla in the US, the scale of China's support remains unmatched. China focuses on supply-side development rather than boosting domestic consumption. Production costs remain low, and consumers save more than they spend. In 2023, consumption was only 40% of GDP, below the global average of 57%. Overcapacity results, pushing global prices lower. Chinese factories often operate at thin margins despite massive output. This dynamic fuels trade tensions with countries like the United States. Yet, the global impact is not entirely negative. Affordable EVs, solar panels, and wind turbines benefit both consumers and the planet. The central question remains: does it matter where the technology comes from? Or, as Deng Xiaoping might have put it, the color of the cat doesn't matter if it catches the mice. In this case, the mice are climate change and global industrial leadership.